got enough to go.
We're ready to go. It's that time.
Ms. Kisa, are you ready to go? I'd like to call the meeting of the North Rock Planning Commission to order, please. Ms. Kisa, would you please call the roll?
Banks.
Present.
Blasco.
Here.
Chambers.
Present.
Deeds. Here. Foster. Phillip.
Here.
Wallace.
Here.
White. Chairman Clifton.
Here. Do we have some members not present?
Make a motion to excuse the absent members.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Those members not present be excused. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Let me remind you to please turn off your cell phones. We'll move into our approval of our minutes. You have been submitted a copy of the minutes of our meeting from September 19th. Motion made and seconded. They be approved as submitted. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. If you are here for the proposed rezoning from R2 to C2 to allow for a commercial development at property located between Windsong Drive and I-430, that has been postponed for today's meeting. I'm told by staff that they will try to come up with a different plan and possibly get with the neighbors and come up with a different plan and bring it back before the commission at a later time. So that will not be heard today. There also another postponement to allow for a daycare in an I-2 zone located at number 12 Mall Mill Curve Court. If you're here for that item today, it has been postponed. We'll excuse you if you'd like to leave, but if you would like to stay with us, that would be fine. Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would you, I'd like to ask staff to reach out to the applicant for rezone 2018-19 on Windsong to please call them and tell them to reach out to the neighborhood. That's very important for our consideration.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
We'll move into our Development Review Committee meeting. Mr. Don Chambers is chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Development Review Committee met and considered item SD 2018-65, Charles Shatler, subdivision, lot 51R, as site plan review of a convenience store located at 1914 Parkway Drive. The applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Motion made and seconded that this application be approved as submitted. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We considered item SD 2018-66, Harris Industrial Park, Tract 5A-R, replat and site plan review of Camping World located at 9801 Diamond Drive. The applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded this application be approved as submitted. Any comments from anyone in the audience? Comments from any of the commissioners? On the application, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
SD 2018-68, Carpet Barn subdivision, lot 1R, site plan review and metal building located at 9313 Mallbell Boulevard. The applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded this application be approved as submitted. Any comments from anyone in the audience? Any comments from any of the commissioners? On the application, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
We met on item SD 2018-67, LVL addition, lot 1R, replat and site plan review of a storage building located at 1301 McNeil Drive. The applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded this application be approved as submitted. Any comments from anyone in the audience? Comments from any commissioners on this application? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We considered item SD 2018-55, Rockwater Phase 4, lots 1 through 7, preliminary plat of residential subdivision. The applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, this application be approved. Any comments from anyone in the audience? Any comments from any of the commissioners? On the application, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move into our public hearing. We'll go to item number 2, rezone case number 2018-20, to rezone property from R1 to an R2 to allow for church activity in a property located at 4312 Idlewild Drive. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir.
Yes. My name is Mike Marler. I represent the applicant, Park Hill Christian Church. And we also have other representatives of the church present today.
Okay. What is the other activities you're looking at, Mr. Marler?
They purchased the residential lot next to a lot they had previously purchased there. They just want to rezone it so that it would be appropriate for a potential addition to the church. The minister and Ken Davenport are here. Do y'all have any specific?
Basically, we don't have any further plans at that time for an engineer to help us with.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the house is just going to be used for youth activities there.
Okay. Were there any comments expressed to the staff?
We just received some inquiries as to what was going on.
Okay. Any comments from anyone in the audience? Any comments? Yes, please, come give us your name.
Raeleen Rigsby, and I live at 4306. My husband and I, after 58 years, are joined at the hip, so might I have him come up as well. He will be holding up some pictures and have something to add as well.
Yes, sir.
Is that a yes? That's okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First of all, I was there when the offer was made for the property because that we're friends with the owner's mother that was selling. And before the pastor knew that we lived next door, he shared his vision for what he wanted to do with property. And it was to be used for the youth activities and family activities, but eventually to be for to include a small park and picnic tables. And I said that we live next door, and it suddenly sort of got toned down some, and that we would oppose that. We have had a preview of what it's going to be like, because from the time that the papers were signed until the sign went up about the rezoning, we had lots of youth games in the back. We have a church vehicle, van that is parked next door. We have had loud music, and I don't know whether it was there or in the parking lot one day, because by the time we got up and got to where we could see, somebody had called the police and it had gotten shut down. We had got up within the past month and saw, when we went to our family room and looked out a very high window, we saw this giant water slide with people actually where they were on the water slide and could look into our family room. So that was the end of our privacy. Lots and lots of people, lots and lots of noise. And then they set up barbecue right against our driveway and our parking and proceeded to barbecue in the front yard. They have two houses there that smoke and all of that mess should have been next door between the two of them instead of us. All of this is before they got rezoned. Now that the sign is up, it got very, very quiet. But I'm not naive enough to think that this is going to last. If we have any time left, then I would like to let my husband, Kelly Rigsby, say we have a bit of a history with knowing whether promises are kept or not.
When they built the Family Life Center, my name's Kelly Rigsby, by the way. When they built the Family Life Center and it came before the committee, we had, I'm an engineer, and a neighbor was an engineer, and he did calculations on the water there that was coming across there. And there was no way that it could accommodate all the water that came through there. The Mardon engineers had their calculations. They only calculated what was on the church. They didn't calculate what came across from the parking lot across the highway. We have been flooded twice. Last year, the first year it lacked about a half an inch coming in our front door. Last May, we got it again. It was about 3 inches less, but we still had 7.5 inches on our carport. Filled up the utility room, the storage room in the back of the house, and we spent 2 weeks drying out, throwing away, and putting things back together. I know this doesn't involve with the Planning Commission, but it just kind of gets you up where we're going if this gets rezoned. We bought there in 1972. We moved in the area in 69. 72, we bought it as a residential area. We never thought that it would be next to the church, and we didn't have any problems with the church for several years. But since then, it just can't seem to get more and more. So we ask that you please do not rezone it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
Hello, I'm Joe Hodges. I'm the pastor of Park Hill Christian Church. And we are so sympathetic to the water issues because we have had to bail out in the church for years and years and years. I've been there 2 years, and previous to that for many more years before that, there are water issues. There is any question about that, all the drainage that comes from two hills and from across the street. And so for plugging up drainage across the street isn't good for anybody, even down around the corner on Islewood. In regards to the noise, we had an outdoor service one Sunday morning, and it was at 9 o'clock in the morning. We had called the city, asked if we needed to have a permit. We were told no, we didn't need to have a permit. So we had an outdoor service in the parking lot. Yes, we had a policeman show up and said, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" I said, "Well, we're having an outdoor church service." And he asked us to turn the music down, and we certainly did. We certainly did. Outdoor bouncy houses, they're the same kind, not commercial, I don't think, but they're the same kind that anybody can rent for a child's birthday party that might happen anywhere in a neighborhood. So we have those from time to time. We don't operate a daycare. We just have a youth program with kids and with youth, and we kind of feel blessed to have kids and children and youth to be able to impact and minister to. It's not a full-time, all-the-time thing, but we do things for our children, and we want to do things for our children and for our youth. And from time to time, there will be a cookout, and those cookers might be on the driveway like they have been, and we're at the other house that we had. So when we get together to have a fellowship event for the youth, we might have the privilege of bringing a friend and doing that. So in a way, we feel blessed to be able to have kids and be able to youth and be able to have young families. At the same time, we truly want to be a good neighbor. And so that is not an all-the-time activity. A reference to picnic tables and a park and that kind of thing. There's a piece of property behind us that a developer owns, and that's a whole vision for maybe someday, and could it be, and Mars and Jupiter and all that have to line up with each other, and that's a general property's property. We don't even own that. It's nothing that anybody can build on, I don't believe, because of the way that the topography is. We're not going to be able to do that. But we are blessed to be able to have purchased the little house. It was already remodeled. We did not remodel it. Had already been remodeled, and it was just great for our use. So I hope that has addressed some concerns, and we would look forward to partnering with the city, the county, the highway department, Corps of Engineers, anyone that could help with the water problems, not only on that corner, but all down Idlewild as it goes around. In fact, one of the trash containers, one of the last water issues that we had, it picked up the water, the trash container, and carried it all the way down to the bridge, where Fairway kind of goes up Snake Hill, if you will. So we would absolutely entertain any kind of partnerships for helping anything in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Reverend Rogers. Yes, sir. I have questions for you. I'm all about the quiet enjoyment of the property I've lived in for the last 10 years. I can only imagine how strongly I would feel if I'd lived there for over 40. And being a good neighbor, or wanting to be a good neighbor is one thing, but, you know, noise and distraction or noise and distraction. I look at this property a lot like the daycare centers that we address all the time. And the neighbors really, really, really don't like the screaming of little children in the backyard. There's a certain pitch that they hit that will just put every adult's nerves on edge. And I'm not saying your youth do that. I'm just saying I'm looking at it like a daycare for 8 to 18-year-olds. But it's a noisy thing that's next to someone who requests quiet enjoyment of their property, okay? So I'm kind of like, a little bit like Solomon, how do you split the baby, okay? I want one group to have quiet enjoyment of their property, and I want you to be able to exercise your faith. So my question is, west of this property is another house. What is it used for?
Well, at this point in time, it's in desperate need of remodel, and that property now is kind of up in our air. Are we going to use it for adult Sunday school classes? Are we going to use it for storage? Are we going to use it for? And you can fill in the blank as we look at that right now. But I appreciate your comments, and maybe to address a couple of those. Our youth time that we have is it starts at 11:30 and goes to youth meeting will go to like 1:30. We don't do anything there of the evening or at night unless it's a lock-in or that kind of event that might be 4 times, 5 times a year. Is that right? We have one of our youth leaders here with us. So we're talking about an evening or night event that would be 5, 6 times a year. Our youth meetings are during the day. That's when our youth meetings are. Now, behind the older house, that first house, that's where a playground is for younger kids. So we didn't put that in the backyard of this new property. We put it in the backyard of the older property, which is right there with the church. So that kind of noise or activities, I think there was a planning to be sensitive for that. So that's where that happens to be.
I guess I'm wishing that the older home to the west was in suitable condition, that the youth services could be there and the storage and Sunday school could be the other side. You see the quietness there?
I
and the
do.
factors.
I do.
The other thing I would suggest then, if you're going to do a noisy activity, find out when the neighbors are out of town. There's levels of cooperation and coordination here that as I said, I'm trying to split the baby here. I'm trying to find happiness for both.
Well, and I
that may not
appreciate
be
that.
possible, and I just have to vote
Yeah.
no.
And I think it's one of the reasons that some of us, and including me, have gone next door, and I appreciate them. I really do. In fact, he has a car sitting underneath his driveway right now that I'm envious of, his Thunderbird that I wish he'd sell to me someday. And but I am altogether sensitive to that, and when we do activities, and we have those, I think that we do carry a responsibility to not to be over there at night and be known as the Yahoo youth group, if you will. So we want to be sensitive to that, as well as be able to do ministry there.
And even take the barbecue pits and put them on the property next door, as opposed to so I'm saying, there's things that go on that really, a lot of forethought and extreme sensitivity to your neighbor goes a long way. Because what happens, what I've seen, and I've done this for so long, is this looks like a clear case of church creep. Parkview Baptist used to be a church in the middle of a neighborhood. Now it's a neighborhood with a church in the middle of it. So, because the church has slowly bought and bought and grown and bought and grown and bought, that they've torn down so much fabric there. Well, this has those characteristics to me, and that doesn't encourage me. I'm trying to get words of encouragement, and yes, we'll work together, and we'll try to do everything we can to be a great neighbor. So that's what I'm getting to. And trying, because I could see, well, you bought this one, you buy 4313 across the street, and the bank goes out of business, and then suddenly it's like, I can see things happening. And it'd be much better if you said, well, we're working with the Matthews folks to buy the land in the back and do a fill job, and that would be much better, because you'd be pushing into an area that's difficult. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
I would love to have a $20 million endowment and do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hodges.
Thank you so much.
Any other comments on the application?
Neighbors, the public.
Okay. Mr. White?
Can we force him to put a fence, a wooden fence? No? Okay, thank you.
We can't do conditions on a rezoning.
Thank you.
Yes, this lady.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Mardon, and I represent my grandmother and my mom from 4313 Idlewild, which is the property right across the street that you just mentioned. I guess my mom would like some clarity on the rezoning, what the difference between R1 and R2 is. When I looked it up on the thing, that there was only one sentence difference, and that was something about trying to keep the property nice, but I don't really know the difference. Could you clarify that?
Go ahead.
R1 is the most restrictive type of single-family residential use. So in R1, the only thing that can go there is basically a single-family house. R2 is also a single-family zoning district, but with churches, we give them a wide range for freedom of speech. We don't want to restrict where churches can go for that reason. But also in R2, they're eligible for the owner to ask for a special use on the property, whereas R1, you cannot.
Okay. And then also with if it were to be rezoned as an R2, what does that look like for property values? Do you know? Because, some of the research that we have done has shown that neighborhoods, when churches come in and do that, they have gone down, but I didn't know North Little Rock specifically, if anyone had any information on the property value.
Planning
Mr.
does
Deeds,
not.
you want to answer that? You're a realtor.
I think sometimes property values will increase, sometimes they go down. It's not something that is a steady and fast thing. I deal very little in residential, but mainly my thrust is commercial. But it's it's an established neighborhood, I wouldn't think that it would decrease your property values in that particular neighborhood.
All right, thank you for that. And then as a wife of a former youth pastor, I'm perfectly aware of what goes on with youth events, and I love the suggestion of them moving those kind of events more towards the actual church property to keep from just the Rigsby's privacy and the privacy of other neighbors. I guess if it is rezoned, what can be put in place, any accountability measures to make sure that it's not being used in a way that they have stated that it won't be?
Once again, as Tim said, we can't put restrictions, but on a straight-up rezoning.
Okay.
But I would ask Tim, do they have to ask for a special use to use the property the way they want to, or no? So if they ask for R2 zoning and a special use, which would allow us to put conditions on the property, no?
In terms of how we define church activity,
I understand. I guess I'm struggling here because I'm really wanting to find a way. I hate to use these words, but it's happened to me so many times when the planning commission deals with, well, when the city deals with churches, is they don't keep their word, okay? And I can point to several instances, but I won't get into that. But my point is that that many churches say one thing and they do something else. And I just struggle with it.
Mr. White?
Hey, Tim, is 4314, is it R2?
yes, it's R2.
What's the name?
Mr. Hodges?
Hey, Mr. Hodges, I'd like to ask another question. Can that house be torn down and a parking lot be put there?
In R2?
In 4314?
I'm just gonna pull up our use table.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask him a question. Here's, and of course, I know the church, and I won't be able to vote on it anyway because I have relatives that go there. But in these cases where these have happened, and I can name half the churches in North Little Rock that have done this, as soon as we get this house, because you made the comment the other house is not in good shape at all, are you going to knock it down and put a parking lot there? Because y'all don't have any parking.
We have less storage than we have parking. Every square inch in our side of our building is really used, and so storage for us is really nice to have right now because of this. I don't have a crystal ball, but at the same time, that allows us to have something that we haven't had in the 2 years that I've been here, and that's storage.
Okay. Then the second question is, are they allowed to do storage in R2? Storage.
So storage, the way we talk about it here is with a business. Is there storage that's kind of incidental to church activity? You know, can they store their equipment that they use to clean the church? I mean, I don't know what kind of
tables, the letters that go on our sign out front, things for arts and crafts.
It's against the rules in R1. You can't buy a house and use it as a source for anything, and I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
So it's allowed?
Correct. R1, you could not, you're allowed to have a single family house there.
R2, you could have storage, so we're okay.
So using a house as a storage facility, you're not, it's not what it's, that's not it.
So yeah.
I think that would be an off-site storage facility, would it not be, though? If I owned a house 3 houses down, and I bought this house, and I wanted to put all my storage out of this house into this house, then that's not allowable. But if I owned a property next door to it, and next door is my church, and I wanted to put my church storage into that house, it would be allowable.
Is this a gray area?
Okay. I was just curious. I didn't bring it home. What I don't want to see is what's happening is I don't want to park out there. And at the same time, if it's storage and the doors are locked and it's secure, then I'm okay with that house.
They would have to go through site plan review for that.
Yes.
And then at that time, fences and all that could come into play.
Mr. Chambers, as I sat there, I thought to myself, one of the things that might be helpful to us is we have a youth calendar, we have a church calendar that lists the things that we're planning. All those are available electronically or paper. We'd be happy to share those with any neighbor around. So there is, I want to share information. So it might be just a small step, but it's something that we're more than willing to do, to go, hey, here's a calendar, here's what we're doing, here's our youth calendar, here's what our youth are doing. I don't have a magic wand, but we are certainly willing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Belasco?
I think Tim just answered, we can't put any kind of,
Restriction.
well, what I'm thinking
Conditions.
is, when you have the border, and you have commercial, you have
You're talking about
residential
buffers and such?
buffers, and we can't do that without rezone site plan review. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We cannot put those at this level.
No.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing we've done in terms of being a good neighbor is we overpaid for that house by about $35,000. So I hope what we did was help increase the property values for sales.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, 2 more. Yes, sir, go ahead.
On the drainage, since they bought that, they put a board fence up between the 2 houses and between the house next to church and the church, which blocks even more of the flow of water, so the next time it comes a big rain, I'm gonna get flooded big time, even in the house. So I'll be out several $1,000s and probably have to move. And it won't be just my house, it'll be all the way down the street. And when they did the fence, they did not have a building permit. They did get one, but that doesn't do any good after it's already built.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good job, Planning Commission. I want to address what Mr. Chambers has talked about.
Go ahead and give us your name for the record.
My name is Ken Davenport. I am the chair of the property at Park Hill Christian Church. So I kind of, it all funnels through me. So the property was bought when it came up for sale to be used as just additional property. And we don't have enough classroom in our present facility for everything we do. The youth were meeting in the house that's presently zoned R2. And then we bought the house that's presently zoned R1 that we're here today requesting be changed to R2. They are side by side. The house that was zoned R1 was the youth house. The R2 was the youth house, actually a classroom for the youth. So then the house we bought, which is R1 that we want to have R2, we've already moved the youth over there because it was renovated and it's much nicer. I've got better air conditioning, I've got better lighting, I've got a better environment for people to be in. The house that I couldn't hear all that about the storage, but basically the R1 house that is full of stuff. That best I can say, Christmas tree ornaments, all kinds of stuff that, that just drives me crazy. But there's all this kind of stuff in there that is part of being a church. And so it's in there. And that's what's in there. Now then, if you were today to decide to allow the R1 that we've purchased to become R2, and let's say down the road somebody decides they want to build a building there, I'm going to act now as an opponent to building a building there. Let me tell you why I'm not going to grant you a special ordinance to build a building there. By the time I get through with your setbacks, you're not going to have room to build a building there. I'm going to want some improvements. It's not contiguous enough to the property because it creates an L shape with the property. The one that's the R2 right now isn't really that great to add on to because there's no room for parking. Gary Clements has worked with me for 2 years about how to add on to this building, and none of our ideas, no possibility is to add on to that. Right now, the highest and best use of the R2 property, I'm going to say this with the church people behind me, I've never said it to them before, we need to tear it down to take care of our drainage problems. Our drainage problems were created by the Arkansas State Highway Department and probably by the developers across the street. If a drop of water falls at Sherwin-Williams, it goes through this man's yard and through our churchyard. That's not our fault, that's not his fault. But that's the truth. You check it out. So we're draining a good 20 acres, 15, 20 acres of hard surface that drains very fast. We have 2 drop inlets on 107 that are both plugged and clogged, so they overfill. In the last 2 years, Mr. Brad Otis can testify, we've had over $150,000 in insurance claims in the last 10 years. $150,000 insurance claims because we've had to replace all the flooring in our church. We did not cause that, nor are we causing any flooding downstream. It's a big question that has to be addressed, and so I don't want to use this forum here today to address it, but I will tell you that we're not responsible for any more flooding. We haven't added any flooding. And we could do an engineering study that would prove that. But now then, let me continue with why I would never grant a special use for it if you were to allow us to go to R2, is because that one that's R1, its highest and best use is to be taken down, and behind us is a retention pond that's giant. It's adequate for everything. It would solve a lot of problems, and Mike Marler has looked at that with us. The possibility of getting the water that is overflowing the street and everything else through that lot, removing a very nice building and getting in that retention pond, that's the only likely use that I see. Can I tell you for sure we're going to do that? No. I can't tell you for sure the church will be around 10 or 100 years from now. Can I tell you, as long as I'm going to be there, I'm going to be a proponent? Of course, because that's the only thing that'll really work. Now then, for what we do with this building that's left over, now you've got a house, and I can't imagine doing anything else with it. From a historic perspective, it's in Park Hill, for gracious sakes. There's no way in the world that we would need to ever tear down that house and make it look like anything but a house. And Don Chambers, all of you know me, I can't stand up and say I won't do it, but you know we don't. That's crazy. Nobody would want to build any kind of building there except leave it what it is right now, and so it looks like it's part of the neighborhood. Now that I'm not in charge of the kids, thank goodness, or the youth, and they've kind of addressed, the noise and that sort of thing, and I certainly think that's a concern. But I think the larger concern is we don't want to be doing something that is either illegal or dishonest or disreputable or even look shady. And so if we are R2, when we're being honest, this is a church. This is what we're using it for, and it's a church, and we can't abuse our neighbors, however you do that. So I can't imagine you ever approving a special use for it if you allow it to be R2. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you.
A couple of questions.
Question been called. On the application, please call the roll.
Banks,
Yes.
Glasgow,
No.
Chambers,
No.
Dietz,
No.
Phillips, Wallace,
No.
White,
Abstained.
Chairman Clifton.
Yes. Your application did not pass here. You do have the right to take it before the city council. If you'll get with Mr. Rivas, he can explain that process to you. And hope you good luck with the city council. Thank you. Next item of business is item number 3, rezone case number 2018-21, to rezone property from C1 to an R4 and to amend the land use plan for public to multifamily to recognize an existing apartment building located at 2500 Willow Street. Is the applicant here? Yes. Please come up, give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Belinda Snow. I'm the Executive Director with North Little Rock Housing Authority.
Okay. Mr. White?
So basically, this is just a mistake.
They're wanting to update, or the building's changing ownership, and so they're wanting to have the zoning to reflect what's actually going on there.
Yeah, we're modernizing, and I think along the way of planning and our reporting and communication with planning, we found out that the current zoning, which we didn't create, the current zoning needed to be changed to reflect an R4, which is multifamily, which it is already and has been since the 1970s.
Okay. Any comments from anyone in the audience on this application? Any comments from any commissioners on the application? Please call the roll.
Banks,
Yes.
Blasco,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Deets,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Chairman Clifton.
Yes. Your application did pass. Give
Thank you.
Mr. Rivas, and he can explain to you
Okay.
what you might do next.
Thank you.
That concludes our regular agenda. We'll go into our public comment section. Anyone have a comment they'd like to make? Mr. White? Who is in the back with the city? Shannon? Oh, okay, that's him back there. No, he's with city clerk's office.
Okay. Let me ask a question, Tim. And I was talking to Sean the other day. In the city of North Little Rock, I am told that there's, it doesn't matter where you live, that the city owns so many feet into your yard.
So typically the public right-of-way, if your pavement on your street's 27 foot, the city might have 40 feet of right-of-way. So the city's property would be, from the center line,
So it's
20
not an
foot in.
easement, they actually own the land.
Correct.
All right, and where I'm going with this is on Fairway and North Hills, the apartments that are remodeling now. All of a sudden, they mowed their grass, but there's a corner there that's on, I guess it would be Randolph in Fairway, that all of a sudden now is just growing up because I don't think the apartment people think that they own it. And the residential house next door, I know they don't own it. So is that the city's responsibility to cut that grass?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay. Because if it's a
I can
city's
check
property-
and see.
Yeah, I know, but it's growing up, and I don't know what we call it.
City's property, it should be their responsibility to cut it.
So I don't want to get into planning law, but all these workshops I go to, left me with the impression that I own the property to the center line of the street, and the public has a right of way for the width of the street. One half on my side, one half on the other. But because of my basic ownership of the center line, the land in front of me to the center line is mine to maintain in terms of grass.
That's only in a rural area.
Okay.
And rivers. Red River's that way.
Doesn't keep me from going in front of my house.
No, well, I was just curious, because we've got areas in the city now that all of a sudden, no one's mowing the grass anymore. It's just like, it's 10 more steps, I'm not mowing it. And I just wonder whose responsibility is, and it sounds like it's the city's.
Well, let me ask Ms. Miller, if there's an ordinance on the, is there an ordinance that says that you're responsible for maintaining the right-of-way in front of your property, from your property pin perpendicular to the street curb?
I do not. I can get it back.
Because if there was an ordinance like that, it would certainly clarify a lot of problems, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Any other comments?
Move for adjournment.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.